Rockies, what to do about Connor Joe.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 22nd day of November in the year 2022. I am the host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every single day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, guess what? You are in the right spot, because that's what we do around here, is talk about the Rockies. And if you are new to the show, if you're listening to the show, we thank you for making us your first listen of the day. You can find us free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. Just search Locked On Rockies and you'll be taken to where you need to go on any of your favorite streaming services. And we're also streaming all of our episodes live on YouTube. And if you subscribe to Locked On Rockies on YouTube, you can know when we go live and you can be a part of the live chat, just like Furious MMO is. A hello to you as well. You can also find us on Twitter at LO Rockies. You can follow me at Paul Holden 33. And if you're wondering who the heck is this guy, well, I'm your Rockies fan extraordinaire, Paul Holden, and I've been following this baseball team my entire life and been bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk for over 2 seasons now. Yesterday, we talked about Cody Bellinger and how it's kind of a slam dunk for the Colorado Rockies. And today on Locked On Rockies, we're talking about a player that would be severely impacted by Cody Bellinger signing with the Rockies, and already saw the impacts of the new prospects and the Rockies turning to those prospects in the second half of the season in Connor Joe. Now, Connor Joe is an interesting case. Connor Joe, I love Connor Joe. We all love Connor Joe. Connor Joe is a fan favorite, but that second half of the season in 2022 was just something that you could not ignore. He was ice cold. He was really bad. And I mean, it's unfortunate to say, because he was someone that was really good that has a really nice approach, that is clearly a locker room type guy where the guys like being around Joe. He's got a good energy. He's got a good story. He's gone around. He's been playing and doing things the right way, kind of your generic sports buzzword things that you like about Connor Joe, on top of the fact that he rocks a mullet. He kind of is everything that you're looking into for a Rockies baseball player. That's kind of the identity. When you look at a player like Connor Joe, when you think of a player like Connor Joe, it kind of screams Rockies baseball in a way. And unfortunately, the slump that started in the second half of the season has really raised some question marks about what the future holds for Connor Joe in Colorado. However, I think that he's going to be around and be more impactful than we might think, and I'll get into that later. But want to talk a little bit more and just kind of review and break down Connor Joe's season. And to help do so, we're going to go check over on Purple Row here. And Mac Wilcox writes, a prolonged second half slump may put Connor Joe's future in question. Now, this is part of their Ranking the Rockies series over there for Purple Row, and Connor Joe comes in at 12 and also finishes with a Baseball Reference WAR of 0.9. And mind you, that's higher than Charlie Blackmon, for example. It's slightly under what Jonathan Daza did for the Rockies, and I believe it's higher than Randall Grichuk. We talked a little bit about Grichuk. Let me get Grichuk at 0.3. An immediate comparison there, you can kind of sit there and say, I like WAR as just a baseline thing where it's a combination of things. And I like the idea of this player is impactful in this way and above the average replacement. I know it can be a little wishy-washy, but I know I use that one a lot. But WAR to me is at least a benchmark stat that we can look at to compare players and really kind of see take all of their stat line and kind of dive a little bit further into it. That's why it's a stat that I like to use. So Connor Joe still outperforms some of these starters for the Rockies, but not necessarily anything flashy like we saw. And again, that slump that, carried a lot too for Connor Joe in the first half of the season. He also didn't have a ton of opportunities as well to in the second half to impact his bottom line. Let's go back over here to what Mac Wilcox is writing here on Purple Row. The chorus of Coors Field, Joe made that simple chant one of the most fun aspects of seeing home games in 2021. Joe made a strong game for himself playing in the spring. He got played in 14 games, and he had an incredible line in those 14 games. 30 years old as well. I didn't know that about Connor Joe. 412, 500, 647 in spring, and that had him kept him on the roster. And he got a hit in 16 of his first 20 games. He had 272 in April and showed extra base pop that amounted to 5 doubles, 4 home runs, and a triple in that month alone. He also walked 10 times that month, which led the team and helped spark one of the league's best offenses to open the season. That's a nice start. The good vibes continued in April, wherein Joe recorded a very similar slash line through 24 games. The power numbers started to dissipate, just 1 double and no homers, but 2 triples. However, manager Bud Black believed in Joe's ability as he tied for the second most games played that month. Joe, the picture of consistency, did much the same in June. July, though, precipitated a demonstrable step backwards. Joe hit just 162 that month, easily his worst hitting month of the season to that point. 6 doubles and another triple eased the sting some, but there was some reason to be concerned. Those concerns were founded further in August in a stretch that saw the 30-year-old hitter go just 6 for 41 in his 14 appearances. 1 double and 1 home run were the sole highlights of an utterly forgettable month. And things got no better in September as he played in just 7 games and again proved largely ineffectual with the bat. What had started off so promising as a season for Joe ended on a disparaging note. That note may well bring his future with Colorado into question. Joe has played the majority of his career as either an outfielder, first baseman, or a designated hitter, all of which are largely claimed as other players have made stronger cases for playing time recently. First base will be manned by either C.J. Cron or Michael Toglia. If an injury or trade occurs, Joe could be a reasonable option as a replacement, but Eleris Montero may make more sense as a player that the Rockies would like to see mature and improve, and he's still just 24. The outfield currently boasts names such as Chris Bryant, Randall Grichuk, Charlie Blackmon, Sean Bouchard, and Jonathan Daza. All are likely to get starts ahead of Joe. DH is probably the spot that he owns the best chance to fill, but even there, the Rockies have proven more options such as Blackmon and Montero. Joe's likeliest home on the roster would be that of the bench role, similar to the one he filled in 2021. Even there, it's unclear, though. And I don't agree with this part, actually. Garrett Hampson is more versatility. Garrett Hampson also waived by the Rockies, so this, I think, came before. So I just don't agree that Hampson has more versatility of boasting. It's saying the elite speed and the ability to play every position. I don't think that Hampson was a better option. And let's kind of stop there. Let's put the brakes and break down that. What's the biggest concern about Joe is where he fits in with the Rockies' commitment to their prospects and where they wanted to get in, and the fact that his season declined. It could be, you could beg to differ that it just might be a one-time slump. It might be this. It could be that. But here's where you come away. Here's my big takeaway from Connor Joe and that second half of the season. We learned that he's a utility bench player, and that's okay. Having Connor Joe as your depth piece, I think is a better option than Garrett Hampson. I think there's a reason that the Rockies move on from Garrett Hampson is because they look at Connor Joe as a better option. I am not too sold on Randall Grichuk. I don't think Randall Grichuk had enough that he is going to be the better option for the Rockies than Joe when you're just looking right now. If you were to say, hey, Paul, who are you going to start in right field right now? If Charlie Blackmon's your DH, Jonathan Daza is your center fielder, and Chris Bryant is in left field, I would still say Randall Grichuk is going to get the start in right field. But I'm very happy and I'm very confident and I'm totally fine with Connor Joe being there, especially with the fact that Connor Joe can fill 3 positions that injuries are going to factor into the outfield and the infield and the DH position. I think that Connor Joe is a better option to fill those roles as long as he's ready to do that and fill that role, which I think he is. I think Connor Joe has had sips and moments, but I think he understands his role on this team and understands that he's 30 and the Rockies are turning to a bunch of young prospects for the future. I don't think Connor Joe is going to be the type of guy that's going to sour his opportunities or sour team chemistry because of prospects playing over him. I think Connor Joe has a good understanding of his career and his time overall. I mean, I know he hasn't been in the majors for more than 3 years, but he's been around baseball for a bit as well, and he's gotten the opportunities to be up there. I mean, it's I'm sure it's hard, it's frustrating, but Connor Joe, I don't think is the type of guy that's going to ruin the chemistry of the Rockies. And again, let's compare Connor Joe to some of the other Rockies players that he would fill that role, and that includes some of the prospects. But before we do that, I got to tell you about some of the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. If you want to see all this World Cups action going on, right? You know, you never know when you're going to pop in. The games are going throughout the day. Kind of want to get in, you can pop in. Maybe you wanted to jump in on some betting action while the game is underway. Well, BetOnline has got you covered for all of that. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball, the World Cup and soccer. They even got esports folks, so Fortnite, Call of Duty, all sorts of stuff. You can bet on it at betonline.net. They've got it all at betonline.net. They are the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. All you got to do is head to the website. That's betonline.net, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis, in case you forgot. Or you can also use your mobile device to learn more about betonline.net. BetOnline, where the game starts. In the live chat here, Furious MMO says, start off well, but then got into a slump and didn't get out. That's the summary of Connor Joe's season. And Connor Joe's also not a really good defensive first baseman. One of the issues and one of the things that we just kind of had a reality check of Connor Joe, and I think that's okay. I am confident that Connor Joe is a better bench utility options than some of the ones that the Rockies had. Garrett Hampson last year in 199 at-bats had 42 hits, 2 home runs, 15 RBIs, 12 stolen bases, a 211 average, a 287 OBP, and an OPS of 594. In his last 3 games, or in the last 2 games, he was 1 for 7 against LA, and he struck out 4 times. This season, he had 19 strikeouts in the last 30 games. He struck out 63 times in that span of 199 at-bats. I mean, he struck out more than he got hits this year. And I know that he doesn't have a ton of opportunities, but that's also to 21 walks. Garrett Hampson is not a better offensive option for you than Connor Joe. That's just simply not the case. Connor Joe was much better than Garrett Hampson at the dish this year. Connor Joe did strike out a lot as well, but also had 300 more at-bats than Garrett Hampson. But guess what? Garrett Hampson struck out 63 times in 199 at-bats over 90 games. Connor Joe struck out 97 times in 404 at-bats in 111 games. Connor Joe had more opportunities, and it's the numbers are better there. 63 strikeouts in that's far too much. Connor Joe's struggles in the second half were tough, but he's gotten better each year in terms of some metrics. He regressed at the end with the slump this year, but it was also the year he had the most. But he took a step forward from 2019 to 2021 when he came with the Rockies, and he got ample playing time. And what did we learn? What did we discover about Connor Joe is, well, we just can't bank too much on Connor Joe being an ultimate transformative, crazy unicorn type player. He's just a solid utility option. Connor Joe compared to Randal Grichuk. Randal Grichuk, 506 at-bats this year, 131 hits, 19 home runs for Grichuk, 259 batting average, 60 runs, 73 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, an OBP of 299, a slugging of 425, an OPS of 724, and an OPS plus of 92. Baseball Reference is what we're doing it here. And that compares to Connor Joe's 96 hits, 7 home runs, 238 batting average, 56 runs, 28 RBIs, 6 stolen bases, an OBP of 338, 335, 359 slugging, an OPS of 697, and an OPS plus of 88. So, yes, there are signs that Grichuk better option. That's the point, right? You traded in the offseason for Grichuk for him to be your starting one of your starting pieces for your outfielder. So now you know that you have your starting right fielder. Grichuk is going to be the starting right fielder, and Blackman's going to play primarily DH. You need depth. You need someone to play behind there, and you need someone that you can trust, and Connor Joe's that guy. It might not be that's going to be an issue when you have Tolia, you have Bouchard as well in the mix, but he's just, if he fills the role of just being the bench guy, which I think is what he expects, then he's a fine option for the Rockies. Because here's the deal. Sean Bouchard in 74 at bats, 9 runs, 22 hits, 3 home runs, 11 RBIs, 297 average, an OBP of 454, and an OPS of 954. I'm taking Sean Bouchard over Connor Joe there as well. He's got more of the upside. He's a younger guy, and you can potentially see what you're getting from that prospect as well. When it comes to Michael Tolia, that's a different story for me. I personally want Michael Tolia to be playing more first base. I want Tolia to be playing where he's supposed to be, where the Rockies really believe in him. I think the Rockies need to make a decision on Eleris Montero, and they need to figure out what they're going to do and where they're going to put him. But I'd like Tolia to be playing first base as much as possible, or DHing. Tolia in 111 at bats, 10 runs, 24 hits, 2 home runs, 12 RBI, 1 stolen base, a 216, 275, 653 line for batting. Not great in some areas, but promising, and a really good promise, especially for the fact that he was getting consistency. And again, Connor Joe is 30, Michael Tolia is 24. And finally, let's just take a look. And I think this is going to be really one of the good comparisons is Eleris Montero's line for the Rockies this year. He was in 176 at bats, 41 hits, 6 home runs, 233 batting average, 21 runs, 20 RBIs, no stolen bases, 270, 432, 702, 85. Those are the OBP of 270, slugging of 432, and OPS is 702, and an OPS plus of 85. So again, all those numbers are pointing to in the direction of, yes, the Rockies should turn to Bouchard and Tolia and Montero for more playing time than Connor Joe. Yes. However, Connor Joe has performed enough for the past 2 years that, sure, if he wants to go off, if he's willing to commit, be part of, if this is what he wants to do, and this is what the Rockies are willing to do, then you can use Connor Joe. And also, another thing that kind of go into our conversation yesterday is Connor Joe might be an interesting trade piece to certain teams. He's older, sure, but there might be team control, team-friendly deals, and packaged together with Jonathan Daza, you're getting 2 players that can play all outfield positions and one that can play a couple others and be a DH for you if you did decide to, say, sign Cody Bellinger. That's the window for opportunity for Connor Joe shrinks when the Rockies do sign a free agent outfielder. I just think that if the Rockies do end up going after a center fielder, Connor Joe then you're really starting to ask questions. But again, if you're going to make a big splash at center field, then you might have some interesting options for trades as well. Let's take a look here again at just some of the positives for Connor Joe as well, and just kind of wrap up that conversation here. Let's take a look at this first, however. Thank you for making Locked On Rockies your first listen of the day. If you like what you see, please subscribe on your favorite streaming service. Leave a little rate and a review, all such a big help. And if you are on YouTube, subscribing to the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel is a massive help. And you can be part of the live chat, just like Nicholas Duval and Furious MMO are right now. been talking about Connor Joe, and I think to really summarize what we're saying is I'm fine with the Rockies using Connor Joe as a bench player. His opportunity to start his year to grab a hold and a foothold in a starting spot for the Colorado Rockies didn't pan out. It started to, and he had his opportunity, but the Rockies need to continue to give opportunities to their young players, but having a player like Connor Joe gives you a solid depth piece. One thing that isn't the most flashy thing, and the thing that you don't really think about, and sometimes you kind of get jealous because teams have an abundance of great players. Sometimes you just need good players. You need good enough players. You need players that can fill the gap. And out of all your options, and ask yourself this as a Rockies fan, last year's and take it as last year, and put yourself in and put it in the second half of the season for this hypothetical. The Rockies need to turn to Garrett Hampson or Connor Joe. Who are you more confident for them to turn to? For me, it's Connor Joe. I'd rather the Rockies be picking Connor Joe in that situation, and it seems like the Rockies believe more in Connor Joe than Garrett Hampson as well, just because we've seen enough of Garrett Hampson. Garrett Hampson with the Rockies since 2018 has just trended downhill since that first look that we got at him. Nothing has necessarily blown you away about Hampson other than the fact that dude can fly. He can just, that's something great. But I'm more confident in the approach, the offense of Connor Joe than I am the speed. The Rockies didn't even use Hampson's speed. That's the other thing. I mean, the tools of Hampson weren't used by the Rockies. They weren't benefiting the Rockies. So when you're looking at utility player options, because you need to have Connor Joes on your roster, this is a good place to be if the Rockies can keep Connor Joe and make a deal, and that's what Connor Joe wants to do. But next year, for Rockies fans, you're not going to see Connor Joe in the starting lineup. You're not going to see a lot of Connor Joe. You'll see him come in late in games. You're going to see him fill in for injuries, but that's the role I think Connor Joe is destined to play for the Rockies in 2023. Will that be the case for him? Will it be different? It could be different, but that's how the Rockies are going to roll, because you look at those numbers, especially from Sean Bouchard, who is really going to be someone that Rockies fans need to keep an eye on throughout the spring and what he does. Of course, the health of Chris Bryant. We haven't even started this offseason discussion about possible upsides of Chris Bryant back in the lineup, but the Connor Joe is just like Garrett Hampson was, just like Sam Hilliard was. There's the room for them on the roster, the space for them is closing, but Connor Joe has proven enough to be the utility player that the Rockies should hang on to, and I think we'll get good productivity out of. I just hope he doesn't play a ton of first base. He was not great at one bag this year. He was someone that I could do without watching play first base, but I like Connor Joe. Like I said, I think he embraces what the Rockies are as a team. I think he buys into what the Rockies are all about. And I think, again, he provides really good depth for the Rockies. It's not the greatest depth, not the greatest utility player of all time, but it's someone that I'm confident that the Rockies can turn to when they need a Sunday lineup or they need to add someone different into the lineup. He can play all over the field. And, again, it's just someone that you like the story, you like the guy, and that's good enough for me. Folks, that's going to do it for today's Locked On Rockies podcast. Furious MMO says, I'm excited for all new players next season. There's a lot of new faces, and we've been talking about it all on the Locked On Rockies podcast. You can find all of our episodes on your favorite streaming service. You can also find us on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. All you got to do is search Locked On Rockies. And if you are there on the YouTube channel, you can subscribe and you can be part of the show and know when we go live. You can also follow us on Twitter at LO Rockies. You can follow me at Paul Holden 33. And folks, thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Now go make the Locked On Sports Today podcast your second listen, or stay up to date with all things in the world of Colorado sports, I should say, with the Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, and Locked On Nuggets podcasts. And until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies